feel like I should have a sombrero on.
What festive music this morning.
I know, it's good music. We need it.
This is the best part. Hold on. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Christian Cano. Welcome to Coffee and Pan Dulce. We are Mama Ruthless again today. We think. We're not exactly sure. But welcome to Coffee and Pan Dulce. I'm Christian Cano, one of your co-hosts, along with Mama Ruth. And we've got Barbara. Well, she'll introduce herself. But Barbara, our neighbor, who is technologically okay today, right?
Yes. I'm functional today. Yay! Yes.
At least for now. So that's right. Also, Stephen DeFiore is not going to be on today, unfortunately, so we will not have the wonderful dry humor that Stephen brings to the show. So we will have to deal with that. So we want to welcome.
I can't provide that either, so I'm sorry.
So welcome today. We do have a guest we hope is going to be joining us. She doesn't have a lot of time, but we hope she'll be able to dial in. Her name is Lucille Puckett. She is one of the community organizers and activists and advocates in the Charlotte area. And she had her and some other people had a great event this weekend. I believe it was on Saturday at several locations around the Charlotte neighborhood areas. And we'll let her talk about that. It's about gun violence. And I know that's a big cause for you, Barbara, Mama Ruth, and all of us as well. But before we get started and before we let Barbara talk for a while, so that way I can start sharing us, since it's just us carrying the show today, I want to introduce St. Bernie. St. Bernie is still with us today. He has taken Baby Trump Piñata's place, and he is with the two candles. If anybody knows anything about those candles, well, anyway, those are candles. And then I've got my rosary in the back. You can't really see him. And he's got this little cross back there that I think is from Nigeria. Someone gave that to me who went on a trip, and I found that in, so anyway, I put it there. All right, with that being said, let's introduce our neighbors. So Barbara, do you want to start and talk a little bit longer today, because I have to share us in the background. So,
okay. Good morning, I'm Barb Bacon. I'm a healthcare advocate here in South Charlotte. And my healthcare advocation lately has been driving people to get their vaccines. I had my first dose on January 30th, and I go back for my second on February 27th. And I was part of the group or the gang of 16,000 people 2 weekends ago that got vaccinated, and it was held at Bank of America Stadium. Overall, I was there on Saturday, and it was pretty well run. It kept moving, but for some people, it wasn't moving fast enough, and I had a minor verbal altercation with the gentleman behind me. I could feel him breathing on my neck. That's how close he was. And I finally said, "Sir, 6 feet." And he finally just irritated me so much that I let him go in front of me, and he proceeded. And it was like, those rat maze of going around and around and around like they do at the airport. Yeah. He just started going around people, and there were 2 guys there with vests on. And I thought they were supposed to be monitoring. And finally I said, "Hey, quit looking at your phones. And what are you going to do about this guy?" Being the shy, quiet person that I am. Yes. And because he's bypassing like people in wheelchairs and little couples that are, slowly moving. And they're kind of startled by all of it. And this one lady, she was afraid because people were too close to her, and you could tell she was freaking out. And here's this bull in the china shop going through, and they finally pulled him over because he tried to pick up one of the ropes and go under it, so he didn't have to go. And I mean, he was just rude. And but I will say that once I got to the end there, and they said, let us scan your QR code, and my phone wouldn't do that. Of course, I had my new phone, and I really didn't know how to use it, so they just sent me over to a table. And they just took my name and my birth date and the last 4 of my social. And I barely sat down and pulled my sleeve up, and I didn't even feel the shot. I didn't feel it at all. This lady was great. She patted me on the arm, and I said, she goes, "You're done." I'm like, "Wow, you're good." And then I waited the 20 minutes, and it was real cold that day. And there was this elderly couple, and she was sitting there shivering, and I had a chair right by the heater, and I went over and I said, "Take my chair." and I'll move one of these over there. You need it more than I do. And I just
Yeah.
kind of walked back and forth away from people.
Yeah.
And then there was this other man that was doing laps and he irritated a whole bunch of people. So the process was great,
Yep.
but the monitoring of people, I don't know whether they were like told to not be confrontational, but I don't think that phase of it was very well managed. And of course, they did send me a survey and I
Let 'em know.
let them know, because Art went in the morning and he said it was jammed.
Yeah.
But he isn't as, I guess, fanatical about the 6 feet as I am.
Oh, I am.
But
Yeah.
I am like, don't invade my space because it's a rule.
And that's even without COVID. I don't like people
Yeah.
to invade my space.
I'm the same way. If you're too close to me, I'm like, I might give somebody an elbow shot or something. Get away.
Yeah.
If I ask you nicely and then you don't cooperate, my husband used to say I had the meanest elbows in the world, and I'm not. Just give somebody a little jab and they're like, oh, I said, you're too
Well,
close.
that's
Come on. It's just,
yeah, that's sad. That's sad to hear that, you know, that actually at the shot event
and
that they may not,
the seniors, no less. It's
yes,
like,
especially
it
if you have
breaks
been
my
trying
heart that
to,
I'm in that group, but that's okay, but
well, you know, no, but still, especially if you have been trying to be as safe as you can to protect
oh,
yourself and
yeah.
protect others, and then you go to the event to get the shot, and
Mhm.
then I'm sure you're thinking, oh God, if I catch it at the shot event,
I know, because
yeah,
you kind of know the timing yeah,
yeah.
I really don't go anywhere anymore. I pick up my groceries, they put it in my car, I spray my car with Lysol, I go home, I'm not going out, and it's like, it really irritated me.
Well, today we are going to be talking about something that irritates all of us, and
Mhm.
hopefully, if Lucille's still able to come in, we'll switch to her as well. But today's topic is actually dealing with Trump PTSD.
And are we
And
going to salute coffee and
oh,
Pandusa?
you're right. You're right. Before we do this, as I always forget, let's make sure that we salute to our neighbors, Coffee and Pandusa. Thank you so much. And we also want to thank Manolo's Bakery, which is our Pandusa sponsor. Located on Central Avenue, Manolo's Bakery is got some wonderful things. If you have not ordered something for Valentine's Day, they have these wonderful boxes of chocolate and churros. And
Really?
if you want cakes or whatever you want, they've got it at Manolo's Bakery on Central Avenue. Please support your Black and brown small businesses and just any local small business here in Charlotte and wherever you live, so that way they can get through this pandemic until we can get out there again like we were before. But so Trump PTSD, there is a gentleman who wrote an article, and he wrote it at the end of January. And we've been talking about this after pretty much after the inauguration. And he is a retired admiral from the Washington, D.C. area. And there's a newspaper called the Capital Gazette, and he wrote an article, and the title of the article was Recovering from Our National PTSD, Post-Trump Stress Disorder. And basically, that's kind of when I started to go, oh, you're right.
Yes.
We all, because I remember after the inauguration, because everything has happened, and even on our show, even after the inauguration for a couple of days, I kept thinking something was going to happen, because during the Trump 4 years, something happened every other day.
Okay, right.
Right. And so I kept thinking something's crazy going to happen. He's going to offend somebody. We're going to hear it on the news. And you kept like looking around, and then it was like President Biden is so normal.
He'd probably be glad to hear that.
Well, they're having their daily press conferences, which aren't confrontational. They're just information. And, we're still dealing with COVID, and then now we're dealing with the impeachment. So he's still in the picture just a little bit. But overall, things have gotten back to a little bit of what we all know to be, I don't like to use the word normal, because then, of course, Stephen would say, well, do we really like normal, the establishment and so forth. But quite honestly, there are some times where I like the establishment. I like to know what is going on. So I think I'm kind of over it. I'm not thinking that something's going to happen. I've come to the realization that he is gone. that it is, you still have the, the Trump people. But I don't know. I mean, Barbara, how are you dealing with it? And then we'll talk about how Dr. B told me he's dealing with it.
Well, I think as we spoke earlier, I am actually on a non-news boycott. I am a news junkie, and I just decided to give myself a break because I'm tired of hearing about him. And like you said, it was every day. And I normally get up on Sunday morning and do my walk and come in, and from 8:30 in the morning until 11:30, I am watching ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox. I watch all of them, and then I watch Flashpoint to get the local, and then I'm done. And I'm like, oh, on overload, but it's given me the variety and the different viewpoints that I need. But it was always, when Trump was president, it always came back to what he wanted, and what everybody else wanted, it didn't matter. So I guess right now, I did watch Meet the Press on Sunday and talk to my two friends that are news junkies like I am. And we're like, yeah, well, I don't think I'm over it yet. But what I want to see happen is something he's got to pay.
Yeah.
There needs to be, I was like super excited when I heard about the big lawsuit against Giuliani and a few of the other people by the computer company. I'm like, aces, you guys. It's about time they pay for this. And Sidney Powell and the other ones that are, that's a lot of money. You don't recover from that. And then, Trump and his taxes, when is that mystery going to go away? And when are they finally going to be able to investigate that? I mean, I think regardless of what the Senate does, and I am amazingly disappointed in our Senate. And our own senator is one of them.
Well, yeah, both of them. I mean,
hopefully they pay the consequences the next time for election. Trump's threatening to primary people. Maybe he'll be in jail. I'm not, it isn't traumatizing me anymore. Like, he used to just drive me crazy. I have never liked him, never. And so it was just, you get sucked in and you just get drug along with everything that's happening. I'm glad it's ended, but now I want to see he and his cronies pay.
I think that's,
They kill people.
You're right. And I think that's kind of where my looking over the shoulder comes from is, I agree. I mean, I'm one of those persons also that, there's this, we need to heal as a nation and all this stuff, which I agree. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to say, no, we don't need to heal. But I also think you have to hold people accountable. You can't just let someone, I've said it before, you can't let someone slap you around for 4 years and then go, oh, my bad. I mean, there's consequences. It doesn't mean, just because you forgive someone doesn't mean you forget it, And so I'm like you, Barbara, I want people to hold him accountable. We need to hold him accountable. Doesn't look like they're going to hold him accountable with this impeachment, but I do think it's important for people to go on the record to see what happened. I know you didn't see the opening yesterday with the impeachment, right?
I did not, but I did see the talk that one gentleman gave, and he almost cried, and his children were there, and his son had just died. I don't remember what his name is. That was riveting. That was riveting.
Congressman Ratchford or something like that.
Okay.
The House members that gave their argument, so to speak, the prosecution, they went first and the defense went second. The ones who did it first, they did an excellent job. I was like, where were these guys the first impeachment? Right. They did an excellent. I mean, I was like, oh my God, this is really good. But Trump's attorneys were so bad.
That's what I'm hearing. And I might watch some of it just to see how bad they are today.
It was
that's terrible.
You don't want, I mean, obviously I want Trump to pay, but you don't want him to have such incompetent attorneys that you feel sorry for him.
I will
And
never feel sorry for him.
well,
Don't
no,
even worry about that.
they were so bad. Yeah, they were so bad that one of the Republican senators from Louisiana
Oh, yeah,
switched his vote.
that's what Art was telling me. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's
Yeah,
good. But
yeah.
but don't you think that I'm sure that the Trump supporters are not watching this?
Later.
But I think for the rest of the country, because we weren't there, the sad thing is they were all victims and now they're jurors and they're just throwing a blind eye to this. And I don't understand that because they're supposed to represent us.
Yes.
That's why we elected them. And it seems like they're more interested in maintaining their power and their seat, and the heck with us, and the heck with the values that we are all supposed to have. And they're just not showing it. And I'm glad I'm an independent voter because now I really am solidly staying this way because I think the Democrats need to get a little more settled and get a little bit more functional. And this is definitely upsetting that. I really think they do have the desire to work together. But when you get roadblocks all the time and to listen to the criticism of the debt that he might be racking up, President Biden, I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, and we have yet to see the horrors of the money that's being spent needlessly. And I will give you an example from my professional background. I was in the pharmaceutical industry for 35 years. And after that time, I switched over to medical devices because personally, my interest was more in that area then. But this distribution of the vaccine by airlines and the military, and there is an organization, and I honestly don't know what they're called anymore, but it was called the National Wholesalers and Druggists Association. And as a pharmaceutical company, it was my job to go to those people when I went from company to company, introduce our product line, because I work for a lot of two startup companies, and make sure that the contracts were correct, pricing was understood, and develop a relationship with these people. So when you ship it to their distribution centers, and they are all over the United States, they ship to tiny little clinics and drugstores. Why are we having this whole new distribution system where nobody seemed to know where anything is going on? And my pharma buddies and I were like, what is going on? What's the matter with these people? And two of these guys used to call on those wholesalers as their job. And then they come back and they say, they're called something else and they're in Canada and Mexico now too. I said, even better, because Canada's having a district. Where are they? Or is it because Trump wanted it to be his way? Do you know how much money this is costing? We, the taxpayers, we're horrified. And we're just wondering if the GAO is ever going to determine this. And now they're shipping it directly to drugstores. Okay, that is normally the way it would eventually go.
Yep.
But if you're driving around town, you see a McKesson truck, that's McKesson. They're a wholesaler drugstore distributor for every product in the United States. Why is the vaccine different? I understand Pfizer and Moderna has the cold issue, but they do this for a living. Yeah. And I don't understand it. So that I'm off my pulpit now, but I don't understand it.
No, that makes a lot. I think that the Biden administration said just a couple of days after they actually took over that they didn't realize how bad it was. It's worse. Right. It's worse. And, you know, they don't. I think everyone kind of knew there was a lot that was puffed up. You know, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Everyone knows when Trump said something or his people said something, it was like a circus performer saying things that aren't really going to happen. Right. You know, and so, you know, now that they've taken over and they're kind of not only intelligence, they're finding out what he said to Putin, what he didn't say to Putin, you know, but they're also finding out what didn't happen with the vaccines, what did happen. It's almost like taking over some business or a house and you find all the secrets in the attic and you're like, oh my
Mhm.
God, this is worse than I really, it really had foundation problems, or, there was the concrete was really cracked. So I think we're going to find out, and to your point about he's going to cost us, I think it's going to take us at least a year to find out how much money has taxpayers just paid for things that were just things that he did, and it, it's going to be mind-boggling, and I'm sure we will still have Trump supporters who will deny,
Right.
they will get upset if President Biden spends a nickel on Snickers bars, but the fact that Trump may have enriched himself by millions and millions of dollars in his hotels, by requiring government people stay in his hotels for some reason, that
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting. But that's kind of what we're talking about with Trump PTSD. I don't know if he will ever go away, but I do think that we are finally, or at least I'm finally getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I've accepted the fact that he can do no more damage,
But,
to
but,
us.
but he is.
Well, that's
And,
what I was.
and that's why I'm like, I really don't want to jump in with both feet. So I'm, as Art puts it, I'm still
Yes.
dipping my toe in the mess to see whether I want to jump in or not. I'm not sure that I am, but I find it interesting that the Senate is giving us such a hard time about the next recovery bill. The ink isn't even dry on the last one. Well,
Yeah.
then where's the money, guys? Where did it go? And
Yeah.
now I'm finding out this one Louisiana senator, I had that radio on in the car when I was going to pick up my groceries, and he's talking about that there were people that were making, $300,000 a year and they got a check. Well, whose fault is that? It's certainly not Biden's fault.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Exactly.
well, you should have brought that up when the second relief checks were being negotiated. Put a limit on it. Now they want to go so low that it isn't going to help.
Yeah.
People,
Yeah. Now that.
I'm just like, okay. But what I think their real fear is that the money that was spent
Mhm.
is going to start coming up as the Biden organization gets approved, his cabinet members, and they're going to start really getting into it.
Mhm.
I think we're going to be stunned.
Yeah, on all that, because it was so much money, and it's still
Oh,
it's still a lot
it's still money, and you can't stop that because they signed contracts.
Yeah.
So,
Who went to
or
so you brought something up I thought was kind of important. I agree with you. One of the reasons why I think a lot of us want Trump to be held accountable is because, and the reason I think that people wanted this impeachment to continue, even though he was leaving office, was because the threat of the impeachment shut him up for a while.
Yeah.
And so I hope that he's one of those persons that's, after I said what I said, he can't do us any more damage, I almost like swallowed my words, because I was like, it is Trump.
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't say that. He might come back and bite us, but he still is.
well, his whole existence is about being relevant.
Yeah.
He wants to be relevant. He doesn't care how he wants to be relevant. He's a sociopath. He just wants to be relevant. He wants to be in the news. He wants us to be talking about him every single time. So that's why I kind of admire Dr. B, because I had a conversation with him on the last show after the show, and he said how he deals with Trump PTSD is he doesn't even talk about Trump in their household. They don't mention his name. They don't do anything. They have literally blocked him completely out of their life, so he's not brought up. It's kind of hard here because I'm a news junkie in politics and so forth, and so it's hard not to talk about him. But at the same time, I understand what he's saying. Is it sometimes it's like a bad date, sometimes you just
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
it's like the only way, I'm just gonna have to forget about you or whatever. But I mean, do you think that it seems like Biden is doing what he needs to do? I mean, I like the fact that I'm not hearing him in the news a lot, other than when people want to talk about him. I don't have to hear about my president every day. We hear about the president every day, but I don't have to unless I want to look it up. So I mean, how does that feel to you as an independent?
I take a look at it from the perspective that I hope this presidency doesn't kill him. He's got the pandemic. He's got the economic crisis. He's got the racial inequality that's bubbling up that you never know when something else is going to happen and bring that. And plus he's got this debt that they're trying to get their hands around. And I'm like, that is just daunting. You know, I mean, I said to Art over the weekend, I said, I wonder if he's sleeping now. Because I mean, personally, if you have like this whole thing with my phone, and I wasn't sleeping at night because my brain wouldn't shut off. Can you imagine? And now we've got the impeachment going on, and they're not approving his cabinet members. He needs this help. So that's just another obstacle in his way. And I guess when he did say that he's going to let the Senate take care of it, he's not going to be involved. He doesn't have time to be involved. And he just wants it over with. And so I guess that maybe he sees things that we as the general public don't see, that, you know, maybe the New York tax thing is going to be heading down the road and they're going to go after him for that. Have you ever heard his niece talk? She's she's like, Donald this and Donald, and he not only is he a psychopath, but he is a supreme narcissist. I worked for one once, so I can relate, and I sit there and I think about it, and
I as well.
Yeah, and it's like, oh my God, I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore. You know, it's like walking on eggshells every day.
It's exhausting. I mean,
I know, and I come home and just go, oh my God, why did I should have taken that other job 1 year earlier, and I wouldn't have had all the rest of the drama in my life. So I can't imagine those poor people in the White House. The people that he brought in himself, he deserves that. But the poor administration people that are, they go from president to president, I feel sorry for them. They must have PTSD really bad.
You're right. And because, you know, they have dealt with president after president, but they've dealt with more, they may not have liked them, but at least they weren't like, this is crazy.
I think they were afraid. They were like scared to death. And how can you do your job when you're afraid all the time?
And you know, we've had this conversation before. I hope this Trump experience, the Trump era, I hope we finally come to the understanding that just because you're a billionaire or a business person doesn't mean you're a good fit for a president.
Right.
You know, because those of us who had worked for people like that, we know the pain, the cost of aggravation it costs an organization to have some. We know that eventually someone like that either gets fired, dies, or something happens, because it can't last forever, because someone complains eventually. People complain along the line, but then everyone's so dedicated to their job, and they usually go, well, maybe this is what it's supposed to be like, you know, in order for me to get to that next level. But I think if in your gut it doesn't feel right, it's not right.
Right.
You know, and I agree with you. I've worked for a couple of people where I took the job because it was like a step.
Yep.
And
I get it.
And then you're dealing with this person who's like, this is just crazy. And you think, is this normal?
Unless you've experienced it,
yes,
you can't understand the depth of destruction somebody like that can do. And I would talk to Art about it, and he'd be like, let's not talk about this, because
exactly. It's
like Dr. B, he doesn't want to hear his name, but now he's very involved in this impeachment thing. I said, but you know where it's going to go? Nowhere. So I am not going to waste my time.
But I do think, I do think, Barbara, that because of how well the House managers did yesterday and how terrible his defense people did.
Yeah, I have to see this, because I heard that he's mad.
That those senators, that the senators that are still going to vote, you know, their minds were made up. They're still going to vote to let him off, but it's going to be harder for them to explain, because people are going to say, did you not see the same thing that I saw?
Yes.
You know, and I do think that it does make a difference in public opinion. They may not be as vocal about defending him, but they will defend. They may find some little technicality or whatever the case may be, but they're not going to be like a Lindsey Graham who is just so vocal. This is just unconstitutional. I think this quiet people down. Yeah, those kind of individuals. So, I mean, I do think that people are starting to get over Trump PTSD in our post-Trump, whatever the term the gentleman used, the admiral used, but I do think that's going to be, the case. So, I guess we don't have a lot of talk about Trump today. So it's just maybe we should switch to another topic.
Well, the interesting thing coming from the pharmaceutical industry, remember hydroxychloroquine?
Yes.
That I had to teach so many people to say it. No.
Hydroxychloroquine.
It happens to be one of my things. You got to pronounce the drug right. But where is it? There's a shortage. Don't we have a stockpile of it somewhere? One of my friends is a pharmacist says, well, maybe. I said, well, weed your way through the channels. They've got it. Remember Peter Navarro being out there saying, yes. No, this stuff works. This stuff works. Yeah, it does work for not COVID.
Yes.
And I'm like, where we, the taxpayers, paid for it.
Yep.
Where is it? Or is that kind of stuff gone because they didn't want anybody to find it?
I mean, you mentioned something I think that we want to forget, but I don't know if we're ever going to forget it. There were people in Trump's administration because, everything's from the top down. When you have a crazy person at the top, other people down try to emulate him because they don't care. They know there's no consequences. They know, I can be this way because Trump likes that. Whether it was his press secretary lady, the last one.
Oh my God, yeah.
Navarro, all of those individuals.
Larry Kudlow for finance.
Yes, all of those individuals, and you think to yourself, how do you? And you know that the only reason they were able to do that was because they had the backing of a crazy person.
Yeah.
And there was no consequences. No one's going to fire that. The person that could fire them is not going to, because that person likes what, they took it to an extreme. And you think to yourself, what are going to be the consequences for them? Because they were taxpayer employees, but they treated us so badly the way they talked to the public. What are their consequences? I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
The ones I want to know what happens to Navarro, but the most interesting person for me is Barr. He got out before he got out, and he is covering his so fast out in the marketplace. I just sit there and watch that, and I'm like, you're a smart man. And when he came out and said there is no fraud, I almost got whiplash. I turned around, I was walking down the hall, and I came running back into the living room to see what he had to say. And I thought, you're doomed. No, it was his first step moving out the door. And several of my friends, two of them are lawyers, said he wants to have a job and a place in the real normal market again. And he's going to do a big CYA job because he knows he has to do that. And now he's giving statements and comments, and good because
there was a while that we were all saying, I don't know how he's going to find a job outside of this. And then you're right. I mean, he covered his behind
really started to. I'm sure he's going to pay in some way, shape, or form. I don't think we'll ever hear about it. But the fact that he is so blatant, and he's on television and going from the sneering, belligerent guy that he was in some of those, when the postal thing was going on, and I'm like, you're our attorney general. You're supposed to be protecting us, and you're protecting him. You're going to pay for this dude. And I want to see what happens with him.
Well, also another Pompeo, the Secretary of State, was so smug. He was so smug towards the very end, and he was just so arrogantly smug, and you could tell he was that way anyway.
Yeah,
but
that wasn't fake. Yeah.
Yeah, that it was just highlighted towards the end because he knew he had like I don't really care. What are you going to do? I mean,
Yeah, but 5 countries refused to let him to come
that's
back.
right.
And I'm like, yes, you stick it to him, I mean, yeah, you deserve
And
it.
and I believe he's banned from traveling anywhere in China.
Good.
He's on that list.
Because
Him
of
and
the
Rand
China virus. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
China virus. So there are some things I think that there's some consequences. I did see what's her name, Kellyanne Conway,
Mm,
who I still don't like to this day, but
yeah.
even though she left, before the election, or she left before the election, she helped with the election. But she's happy. Her and her husband have separated. He's a very anti-Trumper. Her
Yeah,
daughter,
what's the name of that organization he started? I can't.
Lincoln Project, the
Yes,
Lincoln Project, yes, which he did an
I can
incredible
see where
job.
that would cause a divorce.
Yes,
Can't you?
well, yeah, and so I saw her on the season premiere of Bill Maher, and she was like the one he talks to first before he goes to the panel. And
Mhm.
it was the season premiere of Bill Maher, and so we started to watch it, and then it said, oh, and Kellyanne Conway. We said, I can't watch her. It was we fast forwarded through, her host segment. I just can't watch her. She's
Yeah.
just so it's just so it's almost like I can't really watch. What's the guy that played Trump, Biden for on Saturday Night Live that
I don't
stopped?
watch Saturday Night
Oh,
Live.
you
So
don't?
I don't
Okay.
know.
Anyway, he's a comedian, and I can't watch him when he's doing himself because he's so obnoxious that I can't watch him. And that's
But
kind of like,
Baldwin did a great Trump.
oh yeah, yo, no,
I
oh
mean,
yeah,
you'd see him on TV shows and I'd be like, oh yeah, he is pretty. He did the thing with his mouth really well. Yeah.
yes.
But
So,
I don't know.
so anyway,
I,
so there's a couple of characters that I'm not going to miss from the Trump administration, and we'd be curious to find out whatever happened to them, and those whatever happened to so and so, the one hit
yeah,
one,
yeah.
you know,
Somebody should have a show next year at this time. Maybe
yeah.
we
Well,
should put that in somebody's inbox or something. It would
but
be.
it is nice to have a president, more traditional type of
Right, right.
individual, whether we like him or not, which I happen to like Biden, and
I
I
do.
think he's going to do well. He's doing the best he can under, but I agree with you. I am kind of nervous because I saw him signing one executive order, and he looked a little
Tired.
uh not tired.
I,
I don't know if it was tired, but it was like, it was just, you could tell the weight of the world is on
I
his
know that's exactly the right phrase to use because
yes.
that is the way I felt. I really felt
Mhm.
sorry for him.
Mhm.
And I was talking to one of my neighbors about it, and she's like, I hope we don't kill him.
Well,
And I
yeah,
said, yeah, just think of the enormity of what, I mean, he went through it with Obama and he was a
yes,
star. So,
yes.
and I'm sure he understood the consequences, but I don't think anybody realized how bad it was. And I
Yes.
felt sorry for Walensky, the new CDC
Yes.
director.
Uh-huh.
I like her. She's a very credible doctor.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
I am doctor science person.
Mhm.
And if they're not good, I'm not shy about it. But
Yeah.
they beat Tony DeCopo or whatever, isn't he beat her up pretty bad one day last week. And I was real tempted to send him
Yeah.
a little message that because she was real friendly. And
Yeah.
at the end, she was like, and I thought she didn't really deserve what he dished out. And I know that he's trying to, do that next step up, like Nora O'Donnell and everybody else
Yeah.
has done, but there's a way to do that. And when you're only 2 weeks into the administration, you're ripping her a new one. Come
Yeah.
on. You
Yeah.
know,
Especially.
that's how can you say last week that you didn't know how much vaccine you have and this week you do?
Yeah.
Well, if she didn't do it, you would have criticized her. And now
Yeah.
she did it. She was just frustrated. And I don't think he appreciates
Mhm.
what the enormity of that job was because Trump
How
just
bad, how
totally
bad the
shut down the
situation is.
CDC was.
Yeah. Yeah.
When have we ever gone through anything and the CDC wasn't the leader?
Yes. Yeah.
And then you've got some guys saying, well, let's look at shining light in the body and let's look at injecting bleach versus real doctors and real scientists. It's just,
Well, yeah,
it's
I do
awful.
think, yeah, I do think it's going to take a little bit. We hope it comes faster because we want things now. I do think it's going to take a little bit for a lot of the departments to recover from the damage Trump and the Trump administration did and,
Or didn't do.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, like, for example, the Homeland Security and ICE, it's going to take them a while to change the culture of ICE. The culture of ICE was literally do what
Gestapo.
you get up. Exactly. It was so unregulated, and you can just tell from the ICE director here, just the arrogance and the smugness of their conversations. And you think, how could you do that in the professional? You wouldn't be able to do that in a professional world because someone will hold you accountable.
Right.
You could tell there was no accountability because when someone who doesn't have the skill set to hold themselves professional, when they're put in a situation like that, their true selves just, you can tell their street person comes out, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you could see that these were people who moved up the ranks as probably ICE agents, never had really administrative experience. And then once you put someone in administrative experience, it takes a little bit of like, to get, you've been in that situation, it takes a bit of, this is what I really want to say, but this is what I have to say.
Yeah, that politically, that's not correct. You can't say that,
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's hard. I just worry about what, the saying, you don't know what you don't know. Exactly. Oh my God, that's almost why I can't think about it anymore because I'm worried.
Well,
that's not worried for me long term because one of my friends said to me the other day, well, we're on the downside of our lives. I'm like, maybe you are, but exactly. But in reality, that's true. I have to worry more about my nieces, my little nieces and nephews, and the long term for them. But my middle-aged nieces, and now you keep paying my Social Security for me.
Right. Well, but don't you think that's what happens naturally in life? I mean, there comes a point where you're worried about yourself, and then there comes a point where you just flip and you start worrying about others and other people. And I mean, that's being human being. I mean, but then you have people like Trump who never worry about other people, who always worry about someone else. Well, it looks like we are going to be joined by Lucille Puckett. She's joining our show, and we don't have a lot of time, but we're going to try to give her as much time as she needs. Lucille, how are you today? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm good, and yourself?
Wonderful. It's so glad to have you. I'm so glad you're joining us to save our show. We ran out of things to talk about Trump.
Can you believe it?
Right. I say it has been a crazy night and a crazy morning with all these homicides going on in our cities, just like running me crazy.
Well, thank you. And listen, Barbara, do you mind if we go ahead and switch to her?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Because we don't want to talk about Trump. Today's show was dealing with Trump PTSD, and we've talked about him enough, and we don't want to give him any more airtime. But listen, I know that you've been very involved in the community in Charlotte, and for various reasons. And I know that you and some other individuals had a event this Saturday, and Barbara and I were kind of talking about that. I was hoping that you could share with our viewers, what that event was and what you're doing and all that. I mean, I know you from running for mayor,
right?
And I do hope that you make a decision to run for office again, because we do need community advocates in office rather than those who, anyway, that's another show.
Right. A whole nother story, a whole nother show.
Exactly.
We need 3 shows probably for that stuff.
Exactly. So if you'll tell our viewers what was going on this weekend, what is the organization or the movement that you are with and so forth?
Well, on Saturday, and we do this every other Saturday in the community. The organization that I'm with is called Stop Killing Our Children. And the founder of that particular organization is named Stephanie Harrison. And she came to me to partnership because my organization is Take Back Our Hoods, which is helping our own damn selves. And if we're depending on our city council elected officials to do it, it would never get done. So we have to be able to do it for ourselves. But Stephanie lost her son in 17, and I lost my son to gun violence in 16. So as we see the homicide rate is continuously increasing, and our elected officials is not saying anything about it or doing anything about it, we said that we have to step up. We have to get out in the community. We have to give the people another avenue to be able to come to or to see that someone do care about the homicide. We have to raise, I mean, the homicide itself is raising awareness, but we have to raise a prevention awareness to say, hey, we have to stop killing each other. We need to bring resources together to get in the streets and let the community know that we don't support, gun violence. And, if it's food that you need, if it's housing that you need, whatever the resources that you need, our agency will be able to connect you to, those resources. And homicide is not the way. We need to be able to have conflict resolution just going around. Some of these parents are at their wits' end and don't have nowhere and nobody to turn to. And when a homicide occurs by these young teenagers, children, they want to blame it on the parent. But when the parents are crying out for help, as we've seen this weekend also, where a 16-year-old was murdered, shot in the head, brutally, celebrating a friend's birthday by other teenagers. But that mom have been crying out for help for even the 16-year-old that was murdered. I need someone to step in. I need someone to help me. And the police department, the mental health department, several resources that she reached out to felt like he wasn't bad enough. But obviously somebody thought he was, and they took his life. So not only did he need help, not only did she need help, but the family on the other side. More than just the person that lost their life is affected by this. I was at a homicide last night, this morning, where, you see the family, behind the yellow tape, crying, breaking down, hurting. They're the ones that's going to hurt for the rest of their life, because the person that was actually murdered, they don't feel no more pain. My son don't feel no more pain, but I hurt every single day for the loss of, it's a void, it's a hole just shot right through the middle of my heart.
Yeah.
So we're just out walking in different communities, especially those that have had a homicide or more than one homicide, just to say, put the guns down. We're losing too much to this gun violence.
Well, Lucille, first of all, I want to say I'm so sorry about I know the story about your son, and I continuously, my heart breaks to know that occurred to you. But I know you, and I've seen your passion on being involved in the community, and I know that spirit has channeled in a way that, I know you, and I know how passionate you are about doing things to help other people, and that is very rare. Do we see that in the city? And I know you mentioned about those who are elected officials and those who are in power. One of the things that I've noticed, and I don't know if Barbara wants to comment on that, is here in Charlotte, is we do a lot of things to pass the buck. That's just been the history of Charlotte. No one wants to take responsibility for anything. It's always, someone else's problem and so forth. And as the homicide rate has gone up over the last couple of years, it's always been, well, that's just what happens when growing pains happen, or that's just the kids who, as you mentioned, but we need better parenting, or which quite honestly is code for it's the Black kids' parents that aren't doing a good enough job. And the reason I say that is because whenever we have situations of violence, South Charlotte always likes to blame parents. But whenever something happens in schools at a white school, I can't control my parents, my kids. They are individuals, and it's like the parents want scapegoats, so to speak. So it's very hypocritical. But what do you think?
Not only do they make those kind of excuses, but as we saw, the incident where at the white school, the kids were smoking marijuana, they was cussing, they was fighting, but it was all justified and swept up under the rug. Like, we'll just have a conversation with them. We'll just talk to them. They was having a bad day. But when this happens in the Black school, I mean, we have the police department, these children are getting, criminal records for, the same or lesser offenses than, in the white school. But my concern is now, even with, we see, these our young people gang related or, just having different confrontations on the street. And since school has been out, now we have CMS saying, okay, now we got 4 months left of school. They done been out almost a year. We're going to throw them back in school.
Yep.
What measures have been taken? Because I haven't heard anybody talking about this with CMS, that obviously there was some beef between these children that attend CMS schools in high school, that this violence can carry over into the school system. So when the children go back to school on the 15th, what measures are in place that these guns are not taken into the schools or outside in a bush waiting on one of the students to come out? That's putting a whole lot of students in jeopardy. We already saw this play out in one of our schools where the child lost his life.
That's an excellent point, Lucille, and I don't think we have actually talked about that on this show. We've been talking about schools and safety and reopening, but we've talked about it from a COVID perspective. We haven't talked about it from a perspective of a lot of these children or kids have been away, and now that we're going to put them all back, and they not only are they dealing with the stress of COVID, but teachers are dealing with stress of COVID, and everyone. What protections do we have to protect kids from just normal, non-COVID things that would happen if you're not in school for a while? Have you had any people respond to that concern, or because that's a great question. I never even asked that.
It's sad here in Charlotte is when it seemed like when I speak, I'm muted for some reason. People just do not hear what I'm saying. I was even just told on a live the other day that I don't fit the aesthetics of even being a mayor, or to me, just no one per se here in Charlotte. Yes, I was saying that I don't fit the aesthetic. I don't look like a mayor. I don't speak the Queen's English that a mayor is required. So if you go on my page, I even posted it on my page, Lucille Puckett, and you can hear, these words coming out of supposed to be a chosen leader's mouth.
Well,
so I speak about the homicides. I have spoken about the homeless rate. I'm speaking about the danger that not just COVID that I foresee happening in our school system, but it's falling on deaf ear.
Barbara, you want to add anything,
So Lucille, you don't get anywhere with the city council people? What about
No.
Braxton's no help at all?
No, not at all. And I feel like, again, I get this pushback because back in 2011, and I don't know if you have enough time to even hear this story, but back in 2011, I was a public housing commissioner, but I was also a public housing resident. They didn't check my background, didn't know that I had an associate's degree in human services, a bachelor's degree in social work, or a master's degree in business administration. All they looked at was me living in public housing, and they thought I was going to be a yes girl to whatever policies and procedures that they was trying to implement on the residents. But when I gave them pushback, they instantly started out to try to get me evicted from public housing. They spent over a year and a half, and you can also look this up, Lucille Puckett. They spent over 18 months, and I represented myself in court at $100,000 to try to evict me because I was trying to help a young man who was banned from public housing, and that's where his family was, his children, grandmother, because he had a little bitty roach of marijuana. So you're destroying and trying to divide the family, and then they wonder why Black men are not in their children's lives because you take a little small offense and say, oh, you can't be with your children, spend time with your children, not even live there. So they set out to evict me. And eventually, after 18 months, I had a 14-year-old who started having seizures and stroke from all of the pressure, the harassment, and everything that CMS was coming into my apartment, and, police department was sitting outside my house, just a whole bunch of stuff to intimidate me. And I stood my ground for 18 months. Again, represented myself in the courts. And finally, my son started having seizures and stroke, and his life was more important. I missed the deadline of some paperwork, and they was in the court the next day before Thanksgiving. I was evicted.
Oh,
They didn't care where I went. They had the media out there, they had the police out there, they had the sheriff department out there to see me and my children be put on the street. But I serve a mighty, awesome God. There was a woman that I had met along the Hillary Clinton, Obama's campaign, and she had a home. And I went to her and she said, I usually don't have emergency housing, but because I met you in our conversation, I have a house. If you have the first month rent and the security deposit, you can move in today. So when the cameras got to my house the day before Thanksgiving, I was already in another house cooking Thanksgiving dinner because God is awesome.
Yeah.
So they was looking for me. They was knocking on my neighbors' doors and stuff like, where did she go? Where did she go?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm somewhere cooking. Yeah. So, I mean, it has been, so that's why I'm really not supported. And then in 2013, when I ran for the seat of Patrick Cannon, I never say ran against him. I ran for the seat of Patrick Cannon. Everybody felt like, how does she have the audacity to run against him? And he's been in office 20 years. He deserved it. But we all see what happened.
Problem. Yeah.
Right. So I am kind of blackballed here in Charlotte, but I think people are starting to wake up and take notice because I ran in 2013, I ran in 2017, I ran in 2019. Did not win, but I'm consistent. And my platform have not changed. The youth, the community, the policing, the homelessness. And as we can see, those things are, and the economic mobility here in Charlotte. And we can see those things are not getting any better. They're actually getting worse. So I'll be back on the ballot again in 21. And if people want to see change, then they will recognize what true change look like. And it's not the aesthetic. It's not the person that has the Queen's English, speaks the Queen's English.
Sure. Well, listen,
the background. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, we talk about this on, we've been on the air for, this is our 121st show, almost a little over 2 years, every Wednesday. And we talk about this all the time. The biggest threat to old Charlotte are people like us and you. They're this close from losing power because most people, quite honestly, aren't loyal to old Charlotte anymore. That was, the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, and now, I mean, most people who live here aren't even from Charlotte, so they don't have any allegiance to old Charlotte. They want new people who look like the community and so forth. So keep running and keep being involved because if you don't get there, you'll inspire people to get there. And you will be speaking for people who can't speak. So I want to thank you for everything you know.
Right. And see, people like me, it's kind of hard to go against people that's been here in Charlotte because they have the connections, they have the money, they owe people, but people like me who don't have the money, who is out here on the ground, who is trying to make changes, we don't get noticed and we don't get seen. Because when I talk to people, they be like, I didn't know you was on the ballot. Well, I couldn't pay for a billboard or a radio advertisement. I didn't have the contributions or didn't know the proper people to go and get those from. But I'm going to keep running. I'm not going to give up. I tell everybody, and it's the last joke, this is the last thing I'll say, so because I know y'all got to close out. But I tell people, Abraham Lincoln ran 11 times before he was elected president. So I got 8 more times to go. Not to say that I'm going to run 8 more times, but I at least have 8 more times to go.
Hey, that's a great attitude. Listen, I hear you. I've only run twice, and
He needs to stay in touch with us.
Yeah. That is. Listen. Well, it's been great to have you, and thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for bringing. We do have to close. Lucy, if you have time, if you can stay on the show, we want to do a quick promo with you after the show. We're going to disconnect with Facebook. But I want to thank everyone for joining us on Coffee and Pan Dulce. Please get involved. And Lucille, is there a way they can contact you? I know you're on Facebook or social media. Is that right? You want to tell people how they can get a hold of you?
I'm on Facebook, Lucille Puckett, the one with the little slick hairdo on there. So just inbox me and I'll share more information with you.
Excellent. And when is your next event? I mean, are y'all having another event or is it?
Well, our next walk with Stop Killing Our Children is on Sharon Lake Road at 12 o'clock noon. All of our walks is at 12 o'clock. And this was on Sharon Lake Road at the Yellow. We're going to be starting from the Yellow Rose on February the 20th.
February 20th. Okay, so February 20th will be your next event at 12 noon. And those who have a chance, wear your mask. You'll be outside, social distancing. And,
Exactly.
please support what you're doing and thank you for what you do. And as we always do on Coffee and Pandusa, I want to thank everyone for joining us who are on Facebook Live, but also those who join us later on YouTube and also on Facebook on YouTube as well. Next week, hopefully Stephen DeFiore will be back and Mama Ruth will be back. I can't remember the topic next week. We'll have to look that up. I'm sure it's something about, I don't know what it is. We'll post that. But we want to thank St. Bernie. Bernie, thank you for joining us once again. It's so much great to have you over Baby Trump Piñata. You've been a pleasure to have these last couple of shows. And as we always do in Coffee and Pandusa, we're a Coffee and Pandusa. Let's go around the Brady Bunch screen. Tell us where you're going to be. And then we will end the show. We'll start with Barbara and then Lucille, and then I'll finish out. So Barbara, go ahead.
I think I have 2 more people that I'm going to be driving for their vaccinations, but otherwise I'm staying home. I have 2.5 more weeks before I get my second dose, and then maybe I'll be out a little bit more. I don't know. Otherwise, I'm staying home.
Okay. And Lucille, where will you be the next couple of days?
Well, only God knows that. I mean, I can't really say when the homicide occurs, I'm there. I'm just out and about wherever I just see fit and use in the community.
Well, thank you. And once again, I'm Christian Cano, one of your co-hosts of Coffee and Pandusa. I will be here. Football season is over, so I'm going into a seasonal depression, at least until summer. Yeah, at least until summer football starts, or at least until basketball finals. There's really nothing, anyone who likes sports know this is the time where you're like, what is it, Valentine's?
Oh yeah, it's Sunday, right?
It is Valentine's weekend. So
well, you can always join Take Back Our Hoods. There's always work to be done.
Yes, actually, I was going to go to the Saturday's event, but we had some things we had to do. We had to cut some trees down. Very, very complicated stuff. And I'd rather have been walking with you guys only because of the movement rather than cutting these trees down, because these were, anyway.
Well, every Friday at 8 o'clock, Take Back Our Hoods, we have a homicide intervention meeting by Zoom. So just inbox me your email address and I'll be glad to send you all the link.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So we're going to disconnect on Facebook. Ladies, if you could stay on Zoom. And once again, thank you everyone for joining us on Coffee and Pandusa. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.